was found during the 18th year of Josiah's reign, and why was this discovery important? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Chronicles on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verses 8 to 18. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verse 8. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Chronicles chapter 34, beginning at verse 8. In the 18th year of his reign, when he had purged the land and the temple, he sent Shaphan the son of Azaliah, Maaseiah the governor of the city, and Joah the son of Joahaz the recorder, to repair the house of the Lord his God. When he came to Hilkiah the high priest, they delivered the money that was brought into the house of God, which the Levites who kept the doors had gathered from the hand of Manasseh and Ephraim, from all the remnant of Israel, from all Judah and Benjamin, and which they had brought back to Jerusalem. Then they put it in the hand of the foreman who had oversight the house of the Lord, and they gave it to the workmen who worked in the house of the Lord to repair and restore the house. They gave it to the craftsmen and builders to buy hewn stone and timber for beams, and to floor the houses which the kings of Judah had destroyed. And the men did their work faithfully. Their overseers were Jahath and Obadiah the Levites, of the sons of Merari and Zechariah and Meshullam, the sons of the Kohathites, to supervise. Others of the Levites, all of whom were skillful with instruments of music, were over the burden bearers and were overseers of all who did work in any kind of service. And some of the Levites were scribes, officers, and gatekeepers. Now when they brought out the money that was brought into the house of the Lord, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of the Lord given to Moses. Then Hilkiah answered and said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan. So Shaphan carried the book to the king, bringing the king word, saying, All that was committed to your servants they are doing. And they have gathered the money that was found in the house of the Lord, and have delivered it into the hand of the overseers and the workmen. Then Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. In this chapter, we have begun our look at the reign of Josiah. Josiah will be the last righteous king in Judah's history before the Babylonian captivity. In our last lesson, we saw that Josiah was a religious reformer, but that reform happened in stages. He began to reign at the age of 8 due to his father's assassination, and by the age of 16, he began going after the Lord God. Around the age of 20, his 12th year on the throne, he began rooting out the idolatry in the land, not only in Judah, though, but in what had been Israel. Thus Josiah's reign was like Hezekiah's and Asa's reign, in that all three are described as following after God as their father David did. In this section we come to the 18th year of Josiah's reign, when he is about 26 years old. As we come to this date, we should note that by this time the prophet Jeremiah had begun prophesying in Judah, something that his book says began in the 13th year of Josiah's reign, right around the time that Josiah began rooting out the idolatry. Contemporary with Jeremiah were also Nahum and Zephaniah. What happened in the 18th year of Josiah that is so important? Well, what we must understand is that after the reigns of Manasseh and Amon, the temple was in a state of disrepair. Yes, Manasseh had taken the idols out of the temple, but he didn't return it to its former glory. And what's more, Amon restored the idols to that temple, which Josiah would have removed. So after many years of neglect, it was now time to repair it, similar to the time of Joash after the reign of Athaliah almost 200 years previously. This process would have taken some time, and the builders would need to be hired, thus, of course, requiring a collection to be taken from the people, again similar to what happened during the days of Joash. So Josiah sent Shaphan the scribe to the high priest Hilkiah to tell Hilkiah to count the money that had been collected and to pay the builders for their work and for the materials that they needed. Hilkiah did what the king had commanded, and the work of repairing the temple got under way, overseen by the Levites. During this work, Hilkiah told Shaphan he had found something of interest, the book of the law. Now, what is being talked about here? Well, it's not a book like we think of a book, bound with pages called a codex, but rather it would have been scrolls. As to what it contained, from the context of what comes next, it is certain that what is being talked about is the law of Moses, what we would call the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Now, this discovery is important for 3 reasons. First, it shows us that the law of Moses was a product of pre-Babylonian captivity, not the Babylonian captivity itself, as some scholars claim today. It would have been written by Moses, and whether or not we're talking about a copy here or the original is immaterial, for we know explicitly from here in 2 Chronicles that Joash received the book of the law upon his ascension, and following it would have made a copy for himself, showing us that copies did exist. The second reason that this is important is because of what will happen after Josiah's reign, the Babylonian captivity. Think about it for a moment. Nebuchadnezzar is going to burn this temple down, along with everything that was in it that wasn't valuable enough to take as plunder. Do you think he would have saved some scrolls that might be hidden in some room of the temple? No. And if he didn't, we might not have any copies of Genesis through Deuteronomy, or even the books of Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, Isaiah, Jonah, Hosea, or Micah, the books of the Old Testament written by the days of Josiah. So in finding the books of the law, which seemingly had been lost somewhere in the temple during the days of Manasseh and Ammon, God's providence is at work in preserving the scriptures in spite of what is to come. If these books remained lost or hidden, nobody would have been around to save them. But save them they did. But the third thing this discovery shows us is how far Judah had fallen into sin, where even the law of Moses had been lost or hidden somewhere in the temple, perhaps even by a priest who didn't want it destroyed by Manasseh earlier on in his reign. Now, it should be said that we don't know precisely why the book of the law had been lost. But let's just know that it had been found by Hilkiah the high priest. He gave it to Shaphan, who read it, likely only a part of it, to understand what it was and how important it was, before coming to Josiah to read it to him. And it is Josiah's reaction to this reading that will further explain to us why Josiah was righteous like David. So we invite you back for the next lesson, where we will cover Josiah's reaction. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verses 19 to 33. As we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.